What's up, everybody? It is Thursday night, and it is September 16th of 2021. You're tuned in to Nez Says, a place where musicians can get together and inspire each other to play more guitar. With me, as always, is Ty Price and Ben Coombs. How we doing, guys?
Hey, Dave. Happy Thursday. It's always great to be here with you and Ben on Nez Says on Thursday nights, and everyone that's joined us in the chat live. We're so thankful that you've carved out some time to join us tonight. We're very excited. We have a very special guest tonight. He is an extremely busy musician, a very talented musician, a songwriter, a producer, and a very active touring guitar player. He must never sleep. He's toured the world several times over, working with artists such as Engines of Aggression, Beautiful Creatures, Faster Pussycat, Brand New Machine, and is widely known today as Steven Adler's guitar. You know, that guy standing stage left, wielding a Les Paul, and entertaining audiences with some of the most iconic rock and roll songs ever recorded. He has also worked with several heavyweight producers, such as Beau Hill, Jay Bumgardner, and Ryan Green. And we're so excited that he's agreed to join us for a conversation tonight. Please welcome to Nez Says, Mr. Michael Thomas. Michael, how are you?
Hey, Michael. Great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here. You guys are right back at it with Adler. I mean, you've come out of the gate swinging. Really, you've had a pretty busy summer.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Ever since things opened back up and kind of the summer kicked off, I want to say it was like the early July timeframe. We've been on the go quite a bit. We got the ball rolling with a quick warm-up gig in Pennsylvania. Immediately the next day rolled over to the M3 festival, and since then it's been go, go, go.
Now, Michael, I've got to ask, 2020 was a wash for most musicians. Although musicians found creative ways to stay busy, and I want to talk about that during COVID. But from a band standpoint, how much of a break did you guys actually have from when you wrapped your last show to the first show of 2021?
Well, I mean, what's crazy is that's the longest break I've ever had in my entire life. I've never gone a year and a half without playing a show. So our last gig was New Year's Eve, 2019, turning 20. And I clearly remember all of us at the end of the night hanging out, talking, ringing in the new year, and just having a great time. Just talking about, all of our plans for 2020, and outside of touring, obviously, in the shows. That night, we all said, goodbye and went back to our hotel rooms. And we all thought, 3-4 weeks later, we'd see each other and just continue the next run of shows. Obviously, that didn't happen. So, we went just like everybody else, such a long stretch without playing live. It was crazy. So it wasn't until I think it was beginning of July, right, 2021, that we got on the plane to go do our first gig. And as I mentioned, we started in Pennsylvania, and this was kind of a first show for us back. No rehearsals. We showed up to the hotel, got in the same room for the first time in a year and a half. Had a great time kind of catching up and just talking and just enjoying being in each other's company. Because outside of all of the music, they're just, the whole band is like filled with wonderful people. There's so many aspects to touring, obviously, and playing. And if you're lucky enough to have a great group of people that you enjoy being around and people that you genuinely miss when, you don't get the chance to go out and play gigs, it's that much more special when you come back together, right? So we did sound check, and really our sound check was our rehearsal. And we've been doing this for a while, so we thought, okay, well, it's a little risky, but, we'll take a chance and do it. And so really just came straight out of the gate swinging, did the show that night, which was so phenomenal, so cool to be back on stage. And to be in front of a packed room of just like enthusiastic, energetic, and appreciative people to see live music again, like I can't even describe how amazing that was. So we wrapped up that gig, and I think we got off stage like close to midnight, did a quick meet and greet, and then literally got in the transpo and went straight to M3, which is like a 4 or 5 hour drive. And once we got there, I think it was like 5 in the morning, checked into the hotel rooms, maybe caught a couple hours sleep, and then had to shoot off to the grounds to get everything set up for the show. And then boom, we're back on the big stage after literally being together for 12 hours after a year and a half. So it was a little nerve-wracking, but awesome at the same time, right? So after M3, it's just been, like I said, go, go, go. And these amazing, wonderful shows, especially a lot of really great big outdoor events. This past weekend, we were in Wisconsin and we were in Minnesota, and both shows were with Sebastian Bach. And, we've known each other's camps for years. Sebastian Bach's guitar player, Brent Woods, we've known each other for like 15 years. So it was so amazing, such a treat to get to hang out with those guys and catch up and just hang out in general, right? Because if you think about it, Skid Row and Guns N' Roses had this camaraderie back in the day. They toured a lot together. So in its own weird way, here you have Sebastian, you have Steven, who again have known each other now for, 30 years, something like that?
Yeah.
Sure. To be back, in the same venue, bringing these iconic songs to the fans was just so special. And, what a great hang. One of the highlights, though, was we did the show in Minnesota, this wonderful outdoor event at I think it was the Hinckley Casino out there. It's called the Rock Timber Festival. They have it pretty much every year. And we flew out on Sunday, and at the airport, I just happened to be at the terminal waiting for my flight, and so did Sebastian. So got a chance just to hang out and talk for an hour before the flights and just kind of shoot the shit and have a good time. So it was really nice,
That's great.
Yeah. So the piece of this that really floors me is that a year and a half goes by, sound check rehearsal, hit the stage in front of thousands of people, and the summer tour begins there, right? I mean, there's
But here's the cool thing about it. Here's the cool thing about it is this band with Steven has always been like fly by the seat of your pants, kind of reckless, right? And what I love about that, if you truly think about it, it really does kind of capture the spirit of what the band did originally. All those years on the Sunset Strip and those gigs. I mean, you never knew what was going to happen. It could go either great or it could take a nosedive. But it was that excitement, that edge of your seat, like you don't know what's going to happen. That was such a cool allure. It was so almost kind of punk rock, right? You just didn't know what was going to happen. So I kind of dig it because it almost is kind of in the spirit of the, early GNR vibe. So as you said, no rehearsals, just let's get out there and do it.
Well, it's a great band full of talented people. And like you said, there's a chemistry among everybody. So, there's something to be said for that. Michael, how did this journey begin for you? I mean, where did this love of music start for you, and when did it start for you?
I mean, that goes way back, obviously. I was born in New York, and being out there as a little guy on the East Coast, I just remember, just being mesmerized by two things. As a matter of fact, my mom tells this great story about every time Elvis would come on TV, I would automatically stop what I was doing, and I would just focus in on the TV, and I would be fixated. So I think that was like a really young thing, but I just remember being this kid and being so caught up in the mystique and the allure and the power of Kiss. Kiss was everywhere, man. I mean, there was the albums, there was they had every type of merchandise out. There was the dolls, there was the comic book, there was the Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park movie, right, on ABC way back when.
I have the Love Gun jigsaw puzzle, so I'm just saying.
Man,
I still have the Love Gun pop gun. Nice.
I've got the love gun.
I was telling this story maybe like a week ago. Somebody asked, what got you into music, And I said, well, have you ever just seen the Kiss Love Gun album cover? Like, to me, that was just like these gods, and they have all these people at their feet, and just, these larger than life superheroes. I was just so blown away by the whole thing. So was kind of the catalyst, right? When I was a kid, which, side note, 2019, we did the Kiss Cruise. It was obviously Kiss, The Darkness, Warrant, and us. And then, some other bands as well. And this, was still kind of tied into part of their farewell tour, right? So to be able to go out and spend a week with Kiss on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean playing rock and roll, dude, that was like a dream come true. And another quick side note, so we kicked off the very first night. We did the headlining slot on the outdoor big stage. And we're sailing through the ocean, and like the wind's in my hair, and I'm on stage, and the whole boat, everybody's on that top deck because it's first night. Everybody's having drinks and having a good time, just wants to rock, right? This is the big kickoff event. And dude, it was so surreal because number one, the show was amazing. And we had such a good time. But literally, I'm like a half a song into the set, and I'm just throwing down, and I turn around, and there's Paul Stanley leaning on my amplifier. And I'm like, dude, like, this is the dude that got you in the music. And of course I knew they were going to be on the ship, but it sinks in when Paul Stanley's standing 25 feet behind you, leaning on your amp, listening to every note you're playing. And the most amazing thing is he stayed the entire show, did not move.
Wow.
Stayed there, watched the whole show, got off stage, and then hung out with us in the dressing room and had nothing but like the most amazing things to say. He was so complimentary, he was so genuine, he was such a wonderful human being. Like, to me, that was so validating after all these years getting to do that, because they were obviously one of the main reasons I got into rock and roll.
That's great.
Yeah, the guy on the Love Gun cover is leaning on your amp. That's pretty cool.
It was so nuts. I can't even begin to describe how nuts that was. When I was about 7, I moved to the West Coast, right? And I went to grade school and spent the remainder of my, up through high school in the San Francisco Bay Area. And man, what was really amazing about that time period is when I was growing up, you had these guys that were doing all these incredible records on like Shrapnel Records. You familiar with, Shrapnel?
Oh, yeah.
Marty
Friedman.
Marty Friedman. You had Jason Becker. You had
Alex Skolnick.
Michael Lee Firkins. You had all these amazing players doing these records, and a number of those guys were in the Bay Area. Super weird. I was telling this story the other day too. So when I was like 13 years old, I went to go see Cacophony. I don't know if you know that band.
Oh, yeah.
Marty Friedman, Jason Becker's band.
Yep.
Total, full shred, dual guitar madness. I remember being 13 years old and going to like the Santa Rosa Civic Center. And there must have been maybe 150 people in this place. And I'm like a little kid at the front of the stage watching these guys do these incredible feats on guitar. I mean, dude, it was unbelievable to be that close and up front to such genius. I mean, Marty is astounding to begin with. Yeah. But, I mean, Jason Becker is just a whole nother indescribable level. And I don't know if you guys ever got the chance to see him play live, but dude, I watched him play Air on his lap. You're familiar with that classical piece that he does?
Yeah.
And no idea how he does it. I mean, super mind-blowing. And he was just, it was so fluid and so natural, like he didn't even think about it. It was just like the universe was flowing through him. It was just astounding. So I had all this exposure to these amazing bands, and bands like Racer X and Paul Gilbert, all that stuff. It was really like guitar overload at that time. So I mean, there were so many great influences and inspirational players, and so I was very lucky to get to see some of those things at a very early age, right? And when I was, growing up there on the West Coast, I don't know how it happened. I had buddies who were, into music and, playing guitar. And I remember being 10 years old and my mom and my uncle got me this quarter-size guitar because I was still a little dude, right? So, you need something to scale because my hands were, tiny at that time. And I remember getting the guitar and being super excited. And then I went for my first guitar lesson, and it was, Mel Bay's scale book or whatever it was. And I was
the blue book, right?
And then trying to teach me scales. And I'm like, what? This isn't like Van Halen 1984. Like, what am I doing? Like this. So, that's a weird thing. Like when you're a kid and you want to learn how to play an instrument, there's a certain approach, right, that I think you have to take with kids to keep their interest. And unfortunately, my first taste of it, it soured me. So literally that guitar went in the back of my closet, and it sat there for like 2 years. And then I remember being like 12 years old, and another buddy of mine started playing guitar. And he's like, I got this great teacher, you got to meet this guy. So I did, and it like really kicked up my interest again. So I had him come over and start giving me lessons. And like, I remember like the very first day he comes over and he's like, so we're going to go through some basics. He's like, but what do you want to play? What do you want to learn how to play? Yeah. And I was like, well, Y&T, the band Y&T.
Oh, sure.
Dave Manchetti.
Yeah, dude, Dave Manchetti still has one of the greatest voices in rock and roll.
He's amazing.
To this day, man, I'm telling you.
And one of the best Les Paul tunes.
Yeah.
I get it. One of the reasons why I play this.
Dude. I mean, you need no other reason than that. I'm telling you, his tones were amazing. His pipes were amazing. And we've done gigs with them throughout the years. And every time I see them play, every time I hear them sing live, I'm still as equally blown away. Which I have another great story about that I have to tell you. But getting back to that, so he's like, what do you want to learn how to play? And I was like, well, can you teach me like Black Tiger by Y&T? And he's like, oh yeah, let's
so
do it.
Cool.
So, we pop it on and he listens to it and he's fooling around and figures out, he's like, oh yeah, I can show you this. And so then he starts writing out tablature, like 0, 1, 2 on the different strings and the frets. And I'm like, oh man, I can read this. I get this. This isn't musical notes in a Mel Bay book. Like I can latch on to it. Wait, I can do this. So
in fact, Van Halen for that.
Yeah, by the end of that first lesson, I was playing that little intro riff to the Black Tiger, and I'm like, wow, wait a minute. This is a startling, revelation. I can really do this. Mm-hmm. So his approach was so instrumental into like laying that hook and reeling me in the boat, clubbing me over the head and saying, all right, from now on, you're taking lessons every week. So that was it. And after that, like I took a couple more years of lessons, got the basics down. And when you're a kid, you don't have a band you can play with, right? You don't, and you may have friends who play, but a drummer at that age, a little harder to keep solid time, right? So I just kind of picked up on what the instructor was doing, and I was like, you know what? I need to start listening to records and start training my ear. So that's what I did. I mean, every CD in my collection, I would pop on, and I would just sit there until I learned the entire record from start to finish. And then I'd play along with it because there's no better way of, tightening your timing and getting your chops up and playing along with the record. And
you're playing with a great drummer at that point.
Yeah, right.
A great drummer on it.
Yeah. So, I just, that was, and then once you realize that you can do it, once you start training your ear and you're like, oh man, I can pick this out myself. well, then the world's your oyster, right? Because you have a whole collection of stuff. And if I feel like playing this style one day or learning this style the next day, I can do it. So that was a big part, and that really played a big role in the gig situation years later. Really, truly understood how monumentally important that was until really I started hitting the pavement trying to get gigs, right? Because I'll tell this story later, but that was very, very significant. Being able to train your ear and learn things quickly and retain that information was very integral to my career.
Michael, what were some of those early albums you gravitated toward and said, I'm going to play this album front to back, and I'm going to dedicate and commit myself to this until I get it?
So if I could totally embarrass myself right now, which I don't find it embarrassing, but you might find it awkward, is, dude, for a kid learning how to play guitar and easy 3-chord stuff, man, I learned the La Bamba soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
Is that crazy? That's all.
No, that's great, man.
Right? Los Lobos is a super great band, right? Talented,
great band.
But they had done that entire soundtrack, and it was all this 50s style music. And so for being a young kid, that was easy to latch onto and learn the chord structures and get the timing down and start getting fluid through, right? And then after that, I went full bore. It was, like Dokken and YNT, Dio, Kiss, Guns N' Roses. There was so much great music at that time. I mean, you just had everything. And what's weird is, like, a lot of the guys that I grew up listening to, I was very fortunate and very lucky enough to one day either tour, record, write music with. So it's really weird how life works. Like the Guns N' Roses and the LA Guns and the Faster Pussycats and all that stuff. I mean, I grew up listening to all those guys. And then one day I eventually, kind of became that go-to guy that would be out with them.
Well, and I think it's when the three of us were together preparing for this interview, Michael, to be completely transparent, all of us came to the same conclusion that he must have this amazing ear because he's the guy that is always going on tour with these guys, right? So they're, and we all know how that goes because all three of us have done that gig before, and we're not always given all the material that we need to prepare for the gig. A lot of that falls on us as musicians, that it's up to us and to get that done. And you're attributing that to the cornerstone of your success as a touring musician, if I understand you right.
100%, because point in case, I would be that go-to guy, and to an extent, I still get those calls, but it would be like, hey, we have a tour starting in a week. Here's 15 songs. We've got one rehearsal, and then we need you on a plane off to London or off to New York or wherever the tour was starting. So I can't tell you like how many times I got that call, and what got me through preparing was training my ears as a kid and being able to listen to stuff and then retain that and keep that. So and it's funny because I truly feel like if you can do that, obviously you got to show up and you have to be prepared, be punctual, be responsible. And once you get your foot in that door, if you keep it in there, your phone's going to continue to work. If you show up on time, and you're prepared, you know your stuff, you look the part, you play the part, you act the part, you got to give everything 100%. It's not all just the playing. Playing is super important, obviously, because you can't do it unless you play the tunes. Right. But I don't think, there's enough thought given to the other side of the spectrum. Like, some guys are amazing players, but man, they don't show up on time for stuff, or they're kind of scatterbrained about things.
Or they look like me.
Can't be late for rock and fall.
Or you think like me.
You can't be late for bus call. You can't wander off in the airport. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be responsible about things. And so, I was very fortunate. Crazy story. So I played in a number of bands in LA, working my way up in the food chain over a number of years, playing 4 or 5 bands at a time. And I was in LA for quite a while before I really kind of got my first break. One of those was Engines of Aggression, and they had put out a record. They put out an album on Priority Records, and after that, we went into the studio to record a follow-up. And through that band with Engines of Aggression, Trip Holland, who was the singer, and he basically that's his baby. We got to work a lot together on original music, and I learned some really, really great stuff from him. Then we got the opportunity to go into the studio with Steve Duda, who had worked on the Nine Inch Nails album, and Rob Zombie. And so to be in the studio, actually at El Dorado Studios in Burbank, where I believe James Addiction had recorded, it was an amazing experience to work with such a seasoned guy on this music that Tripp and I had put together. And from those sessions came more gigs, and from more gigs came a tour of Japan. And it was crazy, man. I went and did that. That was my very, very first tour of Japan, was with Engines of Aggression. I came back and I got a gig with the band Tough. I don't know if you guys know Stevie Rochelle.
Yeah. Sure.
But dude, that was kind of a weird fluke, right? So I knew that they were looking for somebody, and I guess the guys in the band knew me from Engines of Aggression, so we got in contact, and I talked with Stevie, and he said, "Hey man, I've got 2 gigs in LA next week," and he goes, "Then we have a tour of the Midwest, so I really need to get this sorted. I got a guy coming down from the Bay Area, but I'd like to meet up with you sometime next week." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely, man. Sounds good." 2 days later, he calls me and he says, "Hey, Michael, listen, I think we got our guy, but I just want to thank you for your time and wish you the best." And you know what's really weird? I could have been pissed off. Like, "Hey, man, you didn't even have me down. You didn't give me a chance." But I don't know. I was just happy that they found the guy. And I said, "All right, buddy. Well, hey, best of luck to you. Good luck on your tour." So hung up the phone. And then the next day was like a Saturday. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go out to the beach, see some friends, have a good time, just blow off some steam. And as I'm leaving the house, I close the door, I hear the phone ring. And I'm like, man, like I'm literally 10 steps from the car. Do I want to go back in and answer the phone? Something in the back of my brain was like, answer the phone, answer the phone, answer the phone. So I unlock the door, I go back in, I pick up the phone, and "Hey, Michael." I said, "Hey." He goes, "You know who this is?" I said, "I have no idea. Who is this?" And he goes, "Hey, it's Stevie Rochelle from Tough." And I go, "Oh, hey, man, how are you?" He goes, "Hey, so listen, we had this guy down. I don't think he's going to work. I would really like to meet with you." And I was thinking, okay, well, I guess I'll meet with him next week or something. I said, "Well, when do you want to get together?" And he goes, "Are you free right now?" "Man, I got this party in Hermosa Beach I'm supposed to go to. It's going to be fun. And then I got this guy who's got a tour." And I'm like, "All right, dude, come on over." So literally he came over like 30 minutes later. And he goes, "Hey, man, I'm going to play some stuff." And he goes, "The rest of my band knows Engines of Aggression. They've seen you play. They think you might be a good fit." And he goes, "I want you to learn these 3 songs." And I said, "Okay, cool. When do you want to get together and jam?" He's like, "I'll be back in 4 hours." I'm like, "All right, cool." So he literally came back 4 hours later. We went down to my rehearsal studio that I had with Engines to pick up my gear. And I had learned the 3 songs that he asked me to learn. And I think they were all like Tough's kind of hits,
Yeah.
And as we're walking in the studio, I shared a studio at that time with Russ Parrish, from
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Well, he now does Steel Panther, right? But before that, he was with Rob Halford. And so we walk in the studio, and Stevie starts talking to Russ, and we grab my stuff and we roll out. At that time, just side note, I was playing a Soldano Hot Rod 50.
Oh, cool.
Those.
Oh, yeah.
Great amp.
Yeah.
So as we're walking out, he goes, "Hey, man, do you know who that is?" And I said, "Yeah, it's Russ." "Why?" "I've had a studio with him for a couple of years." He goes, "Oh, well, him and Ralph are doing this new thing called Metal Shop at the Viper Room on Monday nights. It's kind of like this comedy rock and roll thing." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, they just started." He goes, "Dude, it's hilarious. You got to check it out." So I'm like, "Yeah, cool. I'll check it out." Anyways, that ends up becoming Steel Panther, and it's this weird intermingling of people, right? So went back to Stevie's studio and literally banged out the first song, and they're like, dude, you got the gig. And I'm like, cool, we got 2 more to play. Ran through the rest of those, went home, immediately started learning the rest of the set. And then I think like 2 days later, our first show was at the House of Blues with Vince Neil. And then the next night we did a gig at the Viper Room. And then that following morning, we were on a plane. Then we went to go do the tour. So,
cool.
Train your ear. Right?
Yeah.
So, Michael, when you're getting a gig like that ready on such short notice, you got a lot of decisions to make, right? Obviously, they've recorded these songs. People are familiar with these songs. You're approaching it from the aspect of being a musician and being able to perform the tunes. How do you approach? Give us some insight as to how you approach it from a gear standpoint. Taking that recording, listening to it, and saying, I'm going to play a Strat here. I'm going to play a Les Paul here. I'm going to play this amp here. Or I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to keep it really simple, and I'm going to take this digital platform, and I'm going to do this. Give us some insight into how you plan that aspect of the gig.
So that's always, for me, kind of a tough choice, right? Because I'm a huge believer in twos. See, next to me here, I've got the Hughes and Kettner Grandmeister Deluxe 40.
That's a great amp.
I have been with Hughes and Kettner now for, I think, over 15 years. And what's amazing about this guy is it has all the tubes, right? But it's in like a lunchbox size head. It's 40 watts, so I can run a 4x12 on stage. Never have to worry about having enough power. You can run it at 0, 5, 20, and 40, I believe. And what's great about this is it also has built-in effects. And, you know, not like a wide array, like a Line 6 kind of situation, but you've got, you know, some really great basics: delay, verb, flange, tremolo, phaser. So say like in a Steven Adler setting, this is everything I need, because I do have a MIDI channel switcher for this, and I can get all I need as far as rhythm tone with effects. Say like on Rocket Queen, there's some light flange, you know, in the rhythms. Lead, and then clean, say for like, you know, Paradise City, the very beginning. So I can get everything I need out of this for that situation. And for Steven, obviously it's very standard Les Paul, right? And there's not a lot of switching of guitars, which is fortunate because we do so many fly dates. To bring more than one guitar is kind of a hassle. So I always have my go-to Les Paul, which is, the past 2 years has been this gold top here, which you guys
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. With the zebra pickups, which, man, I love this thing. It's such a great workhorse. And then I also had the neck profiled, took the lacquer off the back, so it's natural finish, you know? Yeah. And I just feel like it takes down some of the bulk, and you can get a little speedier with it. It's just easier to play to me. But these are stock pickups. Nothing crazy going on pickup-wise, nothing active, obviously.
Sure.
But this is just a great workhorse guitar. And on our backline rider, we always have a backup Les Paul and, you know, bass, just in case something should happen. So for the Stevens situation, it's a little more cut and dry. For some of the other ones, you know, it all kind of depends, right? I've been in situations where I've been doing like more kind of pop gigs with, say, like, you know, one of the contestants from The Voice, right? Denise Vanderbilt, worked with her for a number of years. She's out of Europe, based in Amsterdam. And so there's a little more variety in her music. So for that, sometimes I'll switch over to, you know, some Line 6 products as far as a kind of a wide array of effects on the go. I feel like there's such great variety with the Line 6 stuff these days. It's another company that I've been in cahoots with for a number of years. I actually use the Line 6 RG50 in my rig as far as a wireless unit is concerned. It's great because, you know, it's a pedal board size, little pedal size. And I've had great reliability with it. You know, to be honest with you, I've had it for years and years and years. I've taken it all over the world and never had a problem. from like big gigs to smaller gigs. Yeah, it's been really reliable.
Yeah,
So,
I used the G50 2 packs,
yeah.
and the G50 super dependable.
Yeah.
Sounds great. It sounds great too.
No, I really think it does. And so, in listening to the different songs, it's determining the gear that you bring. I mean, it really is important because you're trying to capture the tones. And again, if you're on a bus tour, it's a lot easier. I can bring a lot more gear, right? So, like on the bus tours, especially with a faster Pussycat, I'd be like 3 or 4 guitars. And at that time, I was doing a lot of the electric stuff with Yamaha. So I've been with Yamaha for a number of years as well. As far as electric, I was playing the, well, I'll show you one right here. I forgot the exact model number. Oh, it's the AES 820.
Okay.
So this was the one that I used with Faster Pussycat. I've got this Harley manifold cover piece here, which I just thought was a nice touch.
Very cool.
This has, I believe these are Duncan's pickups. And then they have the locking tuning pegs. Nothing extravagant about the guitar, but I mean, they really kind of mimic the nice fullness of a Les Paul, but they're kind of half the weight.
Sure.
So I used these for years and years. They stopped making this model. So then I kind of gravitated back to my Les Pauls. And I always seem to go back to the Les Pauls. There's just something so cool and reliable about the Les Paul, and just the feel of it. Like I just really love the feel. But I did use these AES 820s for a number of years. And I literally had probably, I don't know, 10 of these, all different colors and, different schemes. They did some custom work for me as well. So I use these with Pussycat quite a bit. And then for that gig, I used that Soldano Hot Rod 50 because it was just such a good workhorse with a nice little like a tube screamer for some of the solos. I mean, it just gave it a nice bounce and boost. So I didn't have to do anything too crazy. Now, for Beautiful Creatures, here, this is kind of cool, man. I'll show you this. Yamaha made me this based off the album cover.
Oh, snap.
So you can see the flick, right? And the logo. But here's what's cool. If you see the inlays, it's the skull from the album cover that's got the spade. Mm-hmm. And they go up the neck, and there's crossbones at the 12th fret, right? Continuing up. And so what's really cool about this paint job, besides the fact that they based it off the album cover, is that they had to send this out to GMP to do the flake because they didn't have a nozzle big enough at their facility to get that kind of flake on it. So GMP actually did the sparkling. And if you know any of the GMP guitars,
they're the best at metal flake.
Yeah, it looks familiar, right?
Yeah, sure. Michael, do you happen to have a light to turn on? Because it's really dark in your room now.
Oh, sorry. The sun's gone down here in Dallas.
Yeah. There you go. Perfect.
So you can see
it's a beautiful guitar.
Thanks.
It's got some serious bling. I dig it.
So with Beautiful Creatures at that time, I was using a different model, Hughes and Kettner, right? So I don't know if you guys are familiar. They had a solid state head called the Zentera.
Yep.
Okay, so Zentera was very reminiscent of, say, like a Line 6, where you had the effects built in. You had the floorboard with the dual pedals, volume and wah, and then like the 5 different, selectors for your channels and the banks, right? So I used that Zentera with Beautiful Creatures because I needed more options as far as effects. If you notice on that record, there's kind of some weird sounds, on there. And, they're not samples as much as they are real guitar sounds, just with tweaked out effects going on. If you listen to the beginning of 1 a.m., it's like this weird phaser tremolo scraping the strings, and it has this kind of synthy sound to it. Mm-hmm. I used that Zentera, and then I have a line 6 stack here, which is a little harder to see. But I've got this line 6 Bogner head. Are you guys familiar with that one?
Yeah,
Sure
sure.
am.
So I've had that for a number of years, and I thought, honestly, that line 6 and Bogner did a great job with that head in the fact that it has the tubes in it, right? But then you have the effects built in, so I feel like you kind of have the best of both worlds, right? You have some of that Wagner warmth, but then you have the convenience of all, the different amp mods and the effects from, your traditional Line 6 products. So I actually used this with Steven for a couple tours, and I brought this to Europe with us. And really, I wanted that for Europe because I didn't want to be at the mercy of backline gear and then get there and have my tone change every night. So because of the convenience of the effects being built in and the floorboard, I felt this was more sturdy to fly over to Europe and use on the tour. So it's been a variety of different amps and heads and all kind of weird stuff. It's just tailoring it to the project, right? Really giving a listen to the music and what it needs. So, I just feel like you got to have a bunch of different paintbrushes.
Absolutely. Now, when you're on stage, do you find that it's more silent stages than not, or are they loud stages? Like, do you have your amps cranked on the stage and then you're going through the house as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've always been very conscious about having a good stage volume because, I mean, once you get past a certain threshold, you're making the sound man's job a nightmare, right? And you're just making it more difficult on yourself. And we don't use in-ears. Everything's monitors. Even our singer, Ari Kamin, as amazing as he is as a vocalist, he doesn't use in-ears. He's relying on monitors, which blows my mind, because a lot of guys to sing that high, that kind of stuff in pitch on key is, without in-ears, it's super difficult, Actually, Sebastian and I were talking about that at the airport when we were flying out on Sunday. He was really impressed with Ari and his vocal range and just, man, how that kid nails it.
Well, that's a big compliment coming from him because he's got very big shoes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Hey, let's jump into the chat. We've got quite a few people in here, Michael. We've got some questions rolling in for you. We want to say hello to some folks. We actually have a few folks that are saying this is their first time in. They're here to see you.
Awesome. Come on in.
Ben, you want to take us through?
Sure. A brief but awesome summary of, we've got Headstock Harem, who's also a fan of Gator. Yep, me too. Matthew Stewart's here. Fruitcake Tony, he was on last week with us. Bozique, Terry's 3G, our moderator to the stars. Pooh Ninja made it. Joe Arena, Charles 75N, Bent Tom. Great to see Bent Tom here. The Chad's here. Who else do we have here? Thomas Santiago. Dave's mom, Beverly's here. Hi, Mom.
Hello.
Bruce Brooks is here. Great to see Bruce here. Mickey Suttlemeyer. Dwight Bailey, the hitman himself. Another alumni of the show. Peter
Awesome.
K., another alum. J7/8, Hannon. He's all about the docking. I get it. How can you not be? Let's see. Who else do we have? Garrett Junkie 35's in here. Nice.
David Ennis.
David Ennis is here. Kurt 5150. Jimmy Carr.
Hey, Jimmy.
Juliet Bloom. Thunder Falcon.
Juliet Bloom, Michael. Juliet Bloom asks if you can move up a little bit so we can hear you a little better. She's apparently having trouble hearing your microphone.
Yeah. Let me do that. Let me make an adjustment. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry.
Surely.
And I'm going to say, for the record, I'm a fan of the Line 6 stuff too. I slagged them in the past, but I didn't have a YouTube channel yet at that time. But I've grown to love Line 6. They've been very generous with sending me a couple products to check out, and I was just blown away. I dig that HX Stomp. if I got to do a little fly-in deal and I can, as long as I can backline a decent amp, I'm taking my Stomp.
Well, there's a reason that things like the M5 and the M9 are showing up on so many studio boards.
I love that M9. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of gear questions for you, Michael. What gauge strings are you using on your Les Paul these days?
Usually 10s. Yeah. I just feel like I've been using 10s for so long that 10 through 46. No, sorry. Yeah, 10 through 46 or.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Straight 10s, yeah.
Yeah, and I've been using the D'Addario for a number of years.
Sure.
I used to use Blue Steel because I felt like there was a really nice crisp tone to those strings. And I've switched the past couple of years just because there seems to be like a real nice consistency with the D'Addario strings. There's something about the tone and the feel to them that I just really gravitated towards.
Yeah.
So, so 10s, 10 to 46.
We love D'Addario, and they're right here on Long Island, right here, about 15 minutes away from where I live.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, great company.
This is a great question from our chat, Michael. Do you set up your guitars differently in the studio than you do live?
No, not so much differently in the studio. I feel like it's pretty standard across the board. Obviously, with Steven, we tuned down a half step as opposed to some of the other gigs. It's in standard E. So, I'll take the guitars into my guide just to make sure that, my setup is good, the intonation is good, everything feels good before going out on a run, and make sure that's set up to whether it's, E flat or E. But outside of that, no, I feel like I get the same performance out of the guitar in the studio as I do on stage. I've never kind of differentiated between the two. So, yeah, it's kind of standard across the board for me.
So your Gold Top, is that a 57 reissue custom shop? Is that what that guitar is?
It is a reissue. It's so I think I got that guitar back in 2016 or 17, and I got a guy here in Dallas who does great Murphy aging kind of relicking.
Sure.
Work.
Yeah.
I'm just one of those guys that I like stuff that has character to it. It's kind of like worn and kind of beat up, and I had this great red Les Paul that I took around the world with me on a number of trips, and it had a lot of good battle scars. So since then, a lot of guitars have been retired, but that one I gave him a crack at just because I saw his previous work with some other clients, and I thought, man, this looks so good. I got to have him take a crack at this Gold Top. And so, I love the work that he did on it. So, it's newer, obviously, but it looks like it's been dragged through the mud. So I love it.
Well, it looks fantastic, and the wear marks on the top looks like you wear a lot of bracelets, and that's what we're all.
Yeah, that could be me.
Yeah, it's very cool. So we want to thank Ben Tom for the super chat. He says when Michael talked about the specific years he was in certain cities, it did not add up to the age he appears to look. What's the secret to youth?
Well, first let me say thank you for that compliment. That is awesome. But I assure you that it does add up. So one of my secrets is this bottle over here.
And I was just about to say no excess.
Yeah. So a lot of rock and roll, a little whiskey, and a lot of live music. I think that's the fountain of youth.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Here's a good question. It says, Michael, when you get the call, does it go to a business agent or does it go directly to you? Just curious because it seems things are being negotiated quickly. So yeah, that's a good question, Dan.
That's a great question. So no, the calls are coming directly to me. Now I do have different tour managers in different situations that may reach out to me. about different gigs before I actually talk to the artist directly. But as far as like a management company, no, I've always done things myself. Everything's been like very grassroots, and I like that hands-on approach, right? I like to be in control of, the situation and who I'm talking to, and obviously the terms I'm negotiating. So I've never been in a situation where I've had to have a management company handle that for me. And also, with any situation like that, you're going to give up a percentage for somebody to come in and handle that stuff for you. So I'm very much a hands-on approach guy. I like to know all the ins and outs, no surprises, and negotiate my own deals. Whether it's not just the gigs, my endorsements, across the board, pretty much I handle everything myself.
Right on.
And that's the thing. The more you can take on yourself and be a part of, I really feel the better off you're going to be. You can really guide your own shit, right? You never want to become too dependent on other people. And I also feel that way about writing music. There was a period of time after my first tour with Steven that I decided I need to do my own solo record. And so I ended up doing that after my very first European tour with Steven, and putting that record out. And man, instead of trying to bring in musicians and trying to write an album and having the delays of, I got to bring in this drummer or this singer, I did everything myself, from writing, recording, mixing. The only thing that I didn't do was the mastering. I took that out to a buddy of mine, and it was so educational overall, being hands-on with every aspect of it. It taught me so much, but it also opened so many doors, because when I put out that CD, it was under the title Fastback.
Yep.
Everybody then, a lot of people at that time knew me as a touring guitar player, right? But when I put out that CD, people then saw me in a different light as a songwriter and producer, and man, all this other flood of work started coming in, writing for other artists. And that was an amazing experience. And what was crazy about that was all the time and the money that I put into that record, I basically kind of set up shop where I put up an online store and I sold the CD myself. And I made all my money back in 2 days. It was
that's awesome.
And then I had distribution companies coming at me about handling the record. And then I had a tour offered to me 3 weeks later, and I didn't even have a band because I had done it all myself with the help of the bass player on that record, Brian Saunders. So we basically kind of holed up in our house at the time in the Valley in North Hollywood, and recorded that record. And it was just such a crazy turn of events. I had to hire Barry Squire, who was a guy, still does, do a lot of cattle calls for bands looking for musicians. He worked for Columbia Records for a number of years. And I hired him to bring in musicians to start auditioning, because we accepted a tour that started, I think it was like 2.5 weeks later. So put together a band and got on a plane and went and did that tour under the Fastback banner, which was absolutely amazing. And what's crazy is I still have people asking me, when are you going to do another Fastback record? And there are songs that I've been working on over the years. It's just finding the time to do it and being happy with the material so it lives up to that last release. That's tough, because you start working for other artists and you get caught up in everybody else's stuff. Sometimes it doesn't leave you the time to do your own thing. So be hands-on. Don't wait for managers or people to negotiate deals for you. Just get out there, be tenacious, be persistent. Just, DIY, right? Or DIY, do yourself. DIY.
Yeah. And sometimes you can bring songs to the artist you work with. Sometimes the situation presents itself where that could happen. I remember when Steven was writing his autobiography and releasing his book, he released a great song called Alive, and I believe that you brought that song in, right? That you wrote that song.
As a matter of fact, I wrote the music and the lyrics to that song. Yeah. And you're right. That was a great opportunity. So when Steven put out his book, I had written that song, and I brought it to Steven. I went over to his house, and I said, hey, man, I want to play something for you. And at the time, I had the music, and I had the lyrics, but I didn't record the vocals. I didn't have a guide track for the vocals yet. So I literally took him out to my car and played him the song, and I just sang over top of it. And he looked at me and he's like, dude, we have to record this song. So we ended up striking a deal with HarperCollins, who was the publisher of Stephen's book. So for the first 3 months, they had an exclusive to the song, where if you bought the book, you got a free download.
Uh-huh.
And man, it was amazing. So next thing you know, we went into the studio to record that song. And I basically, gave the guys the demo. Everybody learned their parts, came in, and, they had the freedom to, like Chip's Enough played bass on that song.
Yep.
And he just did a spectacular job. He's such a great bass player, number one. He's so talented, it's sick. But, he came in and did his thing and just, walked that thing up and down the neck, and man, just did such a spectacular job. I can't say enough about Chip and what a phenomenal player and human being he is. And so everybody kind of put their stamp on it, right? And I had the satisfaction of knowing that, I brought in this music and this song and wrote the words that was, penned to the book. And it was just an amazing experience. We went in to the studio to record that with Anthony Fox. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Anthony Fox.
Yeah.
He's
Mm-hmm.
done a lot of work. Everybody from Steve.
He played in Beautiful Creatures for a while, right?
He was our rhythm guitar player in Beautiful Creatures. So Anthony and I have this incredibly long history that goes back years before Beautiful Creatures. I mean, years before Beautiful Creatures. So it's crazy, the relationships, right? When I think back on it, like when I talk about, oh yeah, I used to have a rehearsal studio with Russ and Parrish, and oh yeah, I've known Brent Woods now for whatever 15 years, and I've known Steve now, God, I don't know, it's going on 20 years or something crazy like that. It's so weird when you kind of break it down. But we did that with Anthony Fox, and it was funny because we were trying to rush to get it done because we were leaving for tour. So we got everything tracked. We left for tour. Anthony started doing mixes, and he would send us different mixes while we were out on the road. And I think about maybe 2 or 3 weeks into the tour, we were satisfied with the mix, and we sent it out for mastering. And then, boom, it went out with Stephen's book. And then the minute the book hit, the song hit, and he was doing a lot of TV at that time, man, we were just like swamped with gigs. It was nonstop. So much so that at that time I was doing both bands. I was doing the gig with Steve and Adler, and I was doing Faster Pussycat. And I just got to the point where it was too much. I had to walk away from the Pussycat gig because I couldn't juggle both at that time anymore. And the guys in Pussycat are like my brothers. We've toured all over the world. We did a live record in Australia together. We've been over to Europe more times than I can count. And, I still hang out. When we were in LA 2 weeks ago doing the Rainbow Bar and Grill Backyard Bash, of course, I got together with those guys the night before to hang out and have drinks and catch up. So it's cool, man. It's, these relationships throughout the years. And I'm very fortunate that we still get to hang out and do gigs together.
Michael, I'm wondering if you'd share some experiences where you learned something from, say, Beau Hill and Jay Bumgardner. I mean, being around producers of that level, when you're working with them, what were some of the immediate takeaways you had from those experiences?
So with Beau Hill, what's crazy about that is, that was when I was working with Beautiful Creatures, and we were writing the second record. And it was an amazing experience because at that time, Paul Gargano from Metal Edge magazine was managing us. I don't know if you guys know Paul. I think Paul since went on to work for, Century Media, and worked with a lot of kind of heavier artists. And I just saw Paul at the Rocktember event last Saturday that we did with Sebastian, and which was cool because I didn't know he was going to be there. So I kind of caught up with him briefly at the hotel. And I think he had the suggestion, hey, I'm going to call Beau Hill and bring him in on these new tracks that you guys are recording. So here's a crazy story for you. So we're in this little studio in the valley. I don't even remember the name of the studio, but a buddy of ours owned it, and it was in this little complex with a couple other like rooms beside it. And so we ended up working with Bo for, I want to say, 3 or 4 weeks on new tracks for the second Beautiful Creatures record. And at that time, the starting of Velvet Revolver was rehearsing next door to us. So it was Duff and Slash, and the drummer from, I think the old drummer from Edema, he was the original drummer in that project, right? And then I think Josh Todd from Buck Cherry maybe was singing with those guys at the time. So it was really weird. Like, I'd show up to the studio to work with Bo, and then these guys would be walking into their room to rehearse their songs. It was Velvet Revolver before it was Velvet Revolver. Right. So I'd be in the studio working with Bo, and every now and then we would take a break. And I remember one day the power went out, and we were all kind of outside just waiting for things to get fixed. And then Bo walks up to Duff and says, "Oh, hey, man, I know you. I think I bought your house." And Duff's like, "Oh, yeah, how you doing?" The weird circle, right, of like, I bought your house. So I have fond memories of that time just because of, obviously, the neighbors and then working with Bo, because he had produced so many classic albums and hits. I mean, from what? Warrant, Winger, Rat. Yeah. So what was really crazy with Bo is we had a very similar, I feel like a very similar ear or style to things. Like, we would work on stuff in the studio, and then I would take stuff home and do homework, right? I'd like, "Hey, Bo, let me work on this tonight. I'm going to bring you back some tracks in the morning." And so we'd do that, and he'd be like, "Oh, I really love this part. Yeah, I would have done this too." And it was such a cool, positive experience as far as, like, putting together the songs. I think the construction of songs. I really had a great time working with Bo. It really was like something really special. And when you get to work with a producer of that caliber, I wanted to be there every minute of every day. And what I love too is, so Bill D'Estate from Ben Tanner was the singer of Beautiful Creatures. And so when we were working on different songs as far as some of the melodies, Bo would lay down piano guide tracks for Joe to practice to, as far as like, different melodies and stuff. And I just thought that was so cool, and he was so well versed, and he had such a great ear for melodies that he would lay out a guide track and say, "Hey, Joe, take this home, practice this, come home tomorrow, we're going to lay it down." So, I was really exposed to like a lot of really cool techniques with Bo. And again, just like the construction of the songs. And, when you've sold as many records as that guy, obviously, he knows what he's talking about. So I really, really enjoyed my time with Bo.
Does anything stand out to you about that experience? As guitar players, when we go into the studio, we're hypersensitive about everything around our tone. Did anything surprise you about his choice of microphones or his mic placement, or anything stick out that you said, "Oh, I never thought of that," or wouldn't have done it this way? Maybe.
Well, yeah, with Bo, he had some techniques as far as getting good vocal takes that I thought were really surprising. Some of the tricks that he used. One of them I thought that was the most beneficial was the piano guide track. Like, I never really thought, like, in rock music, like, okay, hey, let's lay down this piano track and let's have him practice to this, so we can kind of get this kind of take out of him, or kind of use this melody. And from a guitar aspect, there wasn't anything that kind of jumped out at me during those sessions, but when I worked with Jay Baumgartner, did the record with the band Anchor, based out of Dallas, actually. Man, that was 3 months of just like really cool stuff. Like, we had different engineers for different parts of the recording. So we had one engineer working with Jay that was strictly on drums. We had one engineer that was strictly on guitars, and bass, and strictly on vocals. So, these are all his top-notch guys that he had in the studio. And I'll tell you, the one thing I took away working with Jay that I'll never forget is around choruses, right? So he's done Korn, Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, No Doubt, Bush. Like, dude, this is crazy accolades.
Yeah. He's got an incredible resume.
Yeah, and at that time, what was really cool was our neighbors. So we were in Studio B. Studio A was Linkin Park, and then in Studio C was Gavin Rossdale. So those were our neighbors for like 3 months, man. I mean, it was absolutely unreal. And when I was brought into that project, basically, that band had been our opening act 2 summers early. They put out a single that did pretty well, and then they were getting ready to do their second record. They were out with Volbeat, they were out with Black Label Society, just a bunch of bands after our tour. And we happened to be doing a gig in Vancouver the same night that they were playing with Volbeat, and kind of ran into one another after like a year and a half. And so they came to our show, and we just kind of caught up and hung out. And then a week later, my phone rings, and I was like, "Hey, Michael, we're familiar with your songwriting with all these other artists, and we're getting ready to do a second record. Could we fly you out to Dallas and help us write this second record?" And I was like, "Well, if it's in the schedule, yeah." So they hired me to come out to Dallas and help them write the record. So I show up, and the singer goes, "Okay, well, the first thing we got to do is we have to work on the song as a collaboration." And I was like, "Oh, cool." He goes, "Yeah, our video director, we thought this might be a good idea, and we reached out to one of his clients, so we can do this collaboration. It's kind of like just a one-off, to kind of build some hype for the record." I said, "Great, well, who's the song with?" And he says, "Oh, we're going to do a song with Snoop Dogg." And I'm like, "What? Like, really? That sounds amazing. Let's do it." So that day, we started writing for that record. So ultimately, what had happened was I got back to LA, and they called me a week later and said, "Hey, could we hire you to come in and record this record with us?" And then eventually, I became part of the band. So we did a week of pre-production at Mate Studios in LA before moving into NRG to record the record. And so, Jay would come down every day and we'd kind of run through the songs and tighten things up. And the one thing that I took away from Jay, which was really influential, was choruses. Obviously, when you think about the Linkin Park choruses and all the bands that he's worked with, they're so big and they're so anthematic, right? And, I always remember he's like, "Dude, if you can, always start on the 1. Bam! Everything starts on the 1. And so we tailored a lot of things around, his advice and his theories around writing those hooky choruses. And it was amazing, man. It was such an incredible experience for 3 months. I mean, and what was crazy was after we finished recording that record, or at least, everything, most of it was done, those guys went back to Texas, and I stayed another week in the studio doing background vocals and harmonies. So I continued to work with Jay and the engineer, finishing up the last of all the vocal stuff. And it was just, it was awesome. It was an incredible experience. I mean, to basically be told, write whatever you want. We have X amount of time, X amount of dollars. Let's just make a great show. The freedom was incredible. And it's one of the records I'm the most proud of. From start to finish, it's just a great rock record.
Oh, yeah. Very, very cool. It's like Jeff K. He says, any stories to share about working with Snoop Dogg? Well, Michael, you just heard him, and he gives you the hook 'em horns. Sign. So Jeff must be in Texas.
Okay, so we did the song with him, and it was funny because we did the demo in Dallas, and we sent the tracks to LA. And I was there for 2 weeks. And literally, like 4 days later, we got his tracks back, and they were phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So we were so stoked. We had knocked out this song super quick. And if you're on YouTube, you can do a search for Anchored, ANCHORED, and the title of the track is called Throwing Down.
Throwing Down.
And you can search making of. So there's the video, then there's a making of the video. We had a videographer with us the entire time as we were making the record, doing that single, and also recording the video. Snoop signed on to do the music video with us. So, and it's a cool video, man. We had such a blast doing that video with him. And so I remember the night before showing up to set to do this video, the director met with us and said, promise me this. If Snoop offers you weed, do not smoke his weed. Because I need you guys functional for the entire day. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, to me, that'd be kind of like an honor, right? Smoking weed with Snoop Dogg. It's like, that's just like his deal. That's the pinnacle there.
I don't care if I green out or not.
He said, I made the mistake of doing it once in Vegas, and I was done for the entire night. I had to go back to my room. So, but, you know, we showed up to set, and he was so cool, man. He's like the guy that you see in the media interviews and all that. I mean, that's the dude in real life. He was so cool, so down to earth, so complimentary. And, you know, he was the guy, the first guy to come over and meet everybody and, hey, what's your name? And shake your hand and talk with you. And, dude, that was such an amazing experience. So he was great. Like, I can't say enough good about that experience and working with him. And then, you know, the work that he did on the track. I mean, he has this great intro piece to the song, and then the whole middle breakdown is this incredible rap that he puts down. It's just, it's brilliant, man. It's just so cool. And the concept, you know, if you haven't seen the video, check out the video, because it really ties in this Dallas kind of country rock roots theme, this anthematic chorus. It really ties all the elements together, and it's just a lot of fun.
And you were playing a PRS in that video, if I remember right.
I was, dude. So get this. Here's the crazy thing. So when I wrote the tune, I wrote the music. What was great about that situation, man, is I could write a ton of music and hand the music off to the singer, and he would give me back like great vocals and great melodies like right away. Like I really never had to step in on any of the vocals. He did a phenomenal job. But when I was writing that riff, and you can see this in the making of video, we're in, you know, this studio in Dallas, and I actually came up with the demo, but I was using my Les Paul, and I'll show you the Les Paul. So this guy here had a bunch of custom artwork done by
that's
Temple.
very cool.
You guys may have seen this. So this is my tattoo that's on my chest piece here. Oop, let me turn this way. There we go.
Very
so
cool.
It's really a guitar filled with a lot of my tattoo artwork. So you see, this is my chest piece here. And then on the back, they did this really cool, like, custom Ouija board. And the crazy thing about this is all the artwork that you're seeing here, obviously it's got my name and a couple other things on it that's specific to me. But this is all burned into the wood. This is not.
That's cool. That's
so
very
basically, Glenn, who did this guitar for me, it took him probably about like 3 or 4 months. I sent him the guitar before I left for tour with Steven, one of our summer tours. And I got it back maybe like, I don't know, a week after we finished the tour. So the detail work in this, and really, I mean, burning all this into the wood, I mean, just a phenomenal job. And he had done a couple other guitars. He did one for Vince Neil. He did one for Tracy Guns. And I want to say a few other artists. So I was really honored that he did one for me. So this is a very special guitar that, you know, I've taken out on quite a few tours. And, you know, it's one of those that always stays in my main boat of go-to guitars.
Very nice. Kaylee says that's her favorite of all your guitars.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people's favorites. And I'm just so thankful that, you know, Glenn took the time to do that for me. I mean, what an honor, you know.
Mayhem, this was a great question. Michael, you mentioned the freedom to write. Does having that much freedom to write add more pressure?
I think it can, but as long as you have a strong group of guys around you, like talented individuals, I mean, I think when you hit a wall or you can hand stuff off to people, I think that's the greatest thing about collaboration. right? I like the freedom to be able to come up with something and then give it to someone else to put their stamp on it, especially when it comes like lyrically and vocally, because somebody may take it in a direction that like you never thought of, and it could be so much better than your original idea. So to me, that freedom can add pressure, but I mean, if you've got a good team that you're working with, I don't know, it's not that scary. So it's a luxury that you don't often have too, right? I mean, it's
Right.
very rare. I was very lucky to be put in that position. And again, if you take a look, it's on. Well, if you have an Alexa device, you can say, "Hey, play Anchored Beneath the Surface" is the name of the album. And man, there's so many great cuts on that record. And it's one of those, I wish it would have got a little more exposure than it did, but I mean, what an incredible experience.
I'm going to listen to that right after the show.
Awesome. Yeah, check it out. And then have you guys heard any of the Brand New Machine stuff?
Yeah, The Devil You Know is just such a incredible track.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Tell us about how that project originated for you, and then the songwriting process of that, because that's a different record.
It is. And what's crazy about that whole situation is I know somebody asked earlier about, is there a manager handling these things, right? And I had mentioned, well, sometimes I have different tour managers reach out to me before talking directly with the artist. So in this instance, I had just finished a tour of the US, Korea, and Japan with Anchored. We had finished that tour cycle. And I had come back to the US, and I was actually in Austin. And a buddy of mine who was a manager called me up and said, "Hey, I've got this band that I'm working with. They're here in LA doing auditions for guitar players." And he goes, "I think you would be perfect because they sound a lot like Beautiful Creatures meets kind of Velvet Revolver, kind of Guns N' Roses." And he goes, "I think if you hear the music, you'll understand it. I think you're the right guy for this." So I was like, "Hey, man, that's great," because Mates was 2 blocks from my old house in LA. I said, "But I'm in Austin right now." And he goes, "Oh, well, these guys are from Dallas." And I said, "Well, let them do their cattle call. And if they don't find who they're looking for, I'll stay an extra day or 2 in Texas and drive up and meet these guys."
Uh-huh.
So literally about 2 hours later, my phone rings again, and it's my buddy, the manager, and he says, "Hey, I told them that you're in Texas. They're going to fly out tomorrow. They're closing this down. They want to meet you in Dallas." And I was like, great. So literally 2 days later, I drove up to Dallas and met the guys. We jammed a couple tunes, and they said, "Hey, we have a gig here in Dallas at the end of the week." It's always one of those things, right? We got a gig in like 3 days. And then we have a week off, and then we're going to India to go play some shows with Guns N' Roses. And at this time, this was Axl's version with Bumblefoot, DJ Ashba, and I think Tommy Stinson was still playing bass. So anyways, like I said, we jammed a couple songs, and they put me on retainer that day. And I ended up doing the show with them in Dallas like 3 days later. Then we all flew back to LA, did a week of pre-production and rehearsal, and then got on a plane to New Delhi, India, and ended up opening up for GNR over there, which was super weird because at this time, Steven and I were on a break. This was like 2013 or 14. So I'm in India opening up for GNR, and I'm hearing the songs after we do our set, but I'm not the guy on the stage playing the songs, which is just a bizarre turn of things, right? But we knew a bunch of those guys in that camp for a number of years. DJ and I actually had a band together after I left Beautiful Creatures. So it was cool just to hang out and be there and have that experience. I mean, in New Delhi, India, it was like, what? This is crazy. So when we got back to the States, they were getting ready to record their debut record with Ryan Green, who was producing that. And they
Cheap
asked
Trick's
me,
produced. He worked
Yeah.
with Cheap Trick for those. Yeah.
Cheap Trick, Megadeth, No Effects, a bunch of different artists.
Yeah.
And so they asked me to stay on and do the record. So I ended up doing that record with Ryan Green in North Hollywood. And, they had a bunch of songs that they had done some tracks for, but they kind of wanted to wipe out all the guitars, kind of start fresh. And so, again, getting back to that idea of freedom, basically these guys brought me in, put me on retainer and said, okay, well, here are the songs, what do you want to do? And I said, well, let's get rid of this, this, and this, because I don't feel these are as strong as this other batch. So we're going to write like 3 or 4 new songs. We're going to take these old songs and we're going to mold them, kind of get them up to speed. And that's exactly what we did. And I started kind of changing stuff, which opened up a can of worms because then we had to recut all the bass and we had to recut all the drums. A lot of the vocal stuff we were able to keep, but there was some new stuff that we had to do just to kind of update a few things. But then we ended up writing 3 or 4 new songs. One of them, the song that I brought in, was The Devil Made Me Do It.
The Devil Made Me Do It is such a strong song on that record. I mentioned that it was my favorite song on that record.
Yeah.
But did you guys lead with Girls Like You as the single from that record?
Yeah, so management wanted to lead with Girls Like You because their idea was to release that during spring break and try to do kind of like, a summer kind of party anthem song, which I understand, the reason behind it. But I really felt like the new stuff that we had written was pretty strong. So like, The Devil Made Me Do It, and a couple of the tracks on that record. And what was really cool about that is, I was putting the music together and I had the guys in LA. It was Wiley Oliver, the bass player, and Brantley Thompson, the singer. And we kind of worked on the lyrics together. And I don't know why the title came up, but it came to my head. I'm like, that's kind of a cool title for a song. I said, actually, The Devil Made Me Do It. It's kind of a cool title for an album.
For an album,
we ended
that's
up
right.
using that the album title. And then, so we had this big, and if you're familiar with the song, it has this big kind of anthemy chorus, right? It goes through these kind of technical guitar parts where I'm not so much playing chords in the verse as I am playing the notes of the chords in the verse.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I'm playing, I think like the first chord is like a F sharp, and instead of playing just a bar chord, I'm going da 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 wow. So I'm working through the notes of the chord, just not hitting a bar chord. And because the bass is so solid behind me, I was able to really kind of maneuver around and make the guitar move instead of just doing like Girls Like You is just standard chords, right? And that was written before I came in, but I added some different layers over top of it. With The Devil Made Me Do It, I had that freedom to really kind of cut loose on the guitar. So that gave me that freedom to really explore some different voicings instead of doing the traditional kind of guitar playing, to really kind of mess around with like different runs and lead downs and climbs up. So it wasn't just that bar chord feel. So that song in particular, I love, and I feel like it's one of the stronger ones on the record.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
I want to thank Taylor315 for the super chat. It says, another fantastic show, guys, and great guest. I'm really enjoying this one. So thank you, Taylor.
Thank you, Taylor. We had a couple of questions, a couple more gear questions for you, Michael. What type of picks do you use live?
So live, what's funny is I just switched to heavier picks. And so I think these are 1.14.
Yeah, sure. Dunlop.
Well, no, I'm with Intune guitar picks.
Okay.
But what I did was before I put in my order with Intune, because I have my logo on the front and back, and they print up all these picks for me. I wanted to experiment with a couple of different kinds because before I was using like a 0.74 or 0.75. And what I noticed was I was getting a lot of snapback, right? So when you play faster, or you have more kind of intricate things, I felt like, and this is totally, maybe it's, my own, I don't know, psychosomatic, but I felt like because of that snapback, there was a tiny bit of delay, right?
Exactly right.
I didn't feel like it was immediate. So I had read a few things where these other players were playing like the heaviest picks they could find. Mm-hmm. So I just ordered a bunch of different types of the Dunlop picks, different gauges or sort of sizes, thickness, and I just kind of played through a bunch of them to see what felt the best to me. And I landed on the 1.14, and I noticed an immediate difference in just some of the response. So I then put in my order within tune and had a bunch of picks printed up. And I love them. And as a matter of fact, I was so kind of taken back by it because it's not something that you really think of. If you're in the recording studio and you're doing acoustic tracks, well, you're going to use a super light pick because you get that nice twang and ring off the lighter picks. You're not going to use a heavy pick on an acoustic guitar.
Certainly not.
Tracks. But when you really start thinking about, like, some of the more finite stuff and that response time and just how solid that feels, I was actually kind of blown away by it. So I had reached out to Eric Turner. I don't know if you guys know Eric Turner, the guitar player
from Warren. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he lives here in Dallas now. And we get together and we record stuff every now and then. And what's great is we've actually done a couple bills together, like M3 and a few other shows so far this summer. And I actually posed a question to Eric. I said, dude, what gauge picks do you use? And he, I think, uses like the 0.74, 75. And I said, have you ever tried a heavier pick? I know this sounds weird, but I truly feel a difference. So I switched over to these heavier ones, I think probably about like 4 or 5 months ago.
Real quick, I just want to say hello to Nez Says alum Rob Cunningham from Didario and Planet Waves. He's in our chat.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, Rob.
Great seeing Rob here.
Excellent.
So Michael, I know that you're heading out to Michigan and Ohio soon with Adler, and I know that machine continues. What else is on the horizon for you in the near future?
I'm always working on stuff, right? And the one positive as far as last year for me was I spent more time in the recording studio working on my own material. It gave me an opportunity to kind of dig back into a catalog of songs, and I was actually in the studio here the other night going through this laundry list of stuff that I have yet to finish, right? I mean, just so many crazy songs stacked up on a hard drive. So I want to get back into, doing more recording for myself, put out some new material. It's been a while. I still get a lot of people asking about Fastback, which to me is so amazing. That so many people gravitated towards that record and really enjoyed that record. So I want to get some more of my own material out. Obviously, there's the shows with Steven. And then I have a couple other touring opportunities that I'm going to look into because I always like to keep my dance card full, So there was another opportunity presented to me here in Dallas not too long ago. A new artist that's kind of doing their thing that has more of kind of an aggressive kind of like rock with just like maybe a twang of country to it. And that artist has been out doing shows with like Dwight Yoakam and a few other folks. So that's a possibility on the horizon. I'm kind of juggling a few things. It's all what I can make time for. Obviously, the first priority is the shows with Steven. When I can sneak in studio work, like I did that song for that horror movie a couple months back, the one that Corey Taylor had starred in, which was so awesome because, when I did that song, it was some of the heaviest guitar playing I've done in a while. My old band, Engines of Aggression, really had, that real heavy, chunky kind of vibe to it, drop tuned, and then the guitar solos on it. I mean, they were just like burners. and it was so fun to do because I haven't done that in so long. So I did that not too long ago, and then recently I just finished a track at a studio here in Dallas for another movie that's in production right now, and it was more of an acoustic track. And we brought in this singer from Hinder, Austin, to lay vocals over top, and it just came out so great. Completely different feel from the other song, but I mean, it's that variety that really keeps me going. I love having a bunch of different types of projects to work on, because if I was to do like just one thing and one thing only, it gets kind of flat and linear to me. I like to have that diversity to kind of challenge yourself. I think like any musician, you should always kind of throw yourself into different situations that are a bit uncomfortable and definitely new, because that's how you grow and learn. Right?
That is excellent advice.
And collaborating with other artists, especially artists that you never thought you might kind of take part in working with, I think is just so beneficial. I always kind of believe in being more of a Renaissance player, having different paintbrushes to pull out of the box for different situations. And what I love about that is, because I do get asked to work on different projects, and they can vary from pop to rock, country. I mean, you just never know. That I can look at these opportunities with multiple perspectives, right? Well, I could do this here, but what if I tried this? I don't always want to go for the obvious choice.
That's excellent advice. That the focus on personal growth, professional growth, there's an intersection between the two that just make you better in the future. That ambition, that pursuit of that, should always be in the headlights for each of us. That's excellent advice. Someone asked, where will you be in Michigan? Stephen Adler will be in Detroit on October the 1st, and then the next day they'll be at the BMI Center in Ohio on Saturday the 2nd.
Yeah, Detroit is the Diesel Concert Theater, if I'm correct. And then the next night is the BMI Speedway in Ohio, which we've done both venues before, and man, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be such a great time. I can't wait.
And guys, if you haven't seen this lineup of the band, you really owe it to yourself to go and see this lineup. I mean, top to bottom, it is so strong. And look, they're playing these songs from, and I mean this in all due respect to Van Halen and all my Van Halen brethren. They are playing songs from the greatest debut album ever produced from a rock band. So, and they do it so well.
And it sounds like it's 1987 all over again. Really sounds like we're listening to the record with a little bit of flair to it. Amazing. It's just amazing stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're so lucky to be able to go out and do that. I mean, these were the songs that I grew up on, and it blows my mind still to this day that, wow, I mean, Steven and I have taken this record all over the world multiple times. To get to do that is just, it's crazy to me. I'm very, very lucky. And then, to have the lineup of guys that we have in the band. I mean, Steven and I now have been working together for, oh my God, over 15 years off and on. And what's really super cool is, recently our bass player that we've had in the band for a number of years, Tanya O'Callahan, who's just a monster bass player herself. She has other pursuits and interests that she's doing. She's actually working on a few new projects outside of music. Because of that, we had to bring somebody else in to join us on the recent shows and upcoming shows. And we were lucky enough to get Todd Kearns from Slash's band to be a part of this camp and do shows with us. Todd is just a wonderful guy, amazing human being. I can't say enough good about him. Incredibly talented, and it's just a joy to work with. I mean, I really look forward to these gigs because, I mean, as a group, we just have a lot of fun. And I think that translates on the stage, right? I mean, that's the other thing that I feel super lucky about is when you enjoy the people that you work with, I think you get that reflected in the show. And if you've seen the show, and especially now that we've kind of got over the COVID slump and blew the dust off the songs and are now back in the thick of it, if you see some of the footage from Rocktember last weekend, or Wisconsin Dells the night before, or the Fremont Street Experience in Vegas, or the Rainbow Backyard Bash, I mean, this is a show that is nonstop, for 90 minutes. Nobody sits still. Nobody's staring at their shoes. We're like monkeys running around that stage, just having a blast, like little kids. So I feel like that energy translates to the audience, and everybody walks away just having a great time. And it's not a situation like we're trying to be anybody. Like, I don't want anybody to get the impression that, oh, they're trying to like copy this and this and, be this. Honestly, it's just our own interpretation of the songs. And Steven's always been like, dude, don't be that guy that tries to emulate somebody else. Just enjoy yourself and do your thing. And if you get that, then you get the band, right?
Well, the fact is, Steven Adler is the original drummer in that band, so he has the right to play those songs, and you guys have the right to play those songs.
Yeah.
So you're not copying anyone. You're playing the songs with the original guy. It just is what it is.
Yeah. And so, we've always never felt the pressure of like, oh, you have to emulate this or you have to do that. Like, we just have a great time playing the songs. We try to, do them as much justice as possible, and then throw our own little flair over tops of the pieces. And, just, I don't want to say, make it your own, in the sense that you're doing justice to the songs. The audience is having a good time. And everything translates like beautifully on stage, like just the energy, and I don't know, just the overall tone of it, man. It's so much fun, and
it is a lot of fun.
Blown away by the audience's response.
It's a lot of fun, and there is some unique personality to the band, without question. Michael, what you've been listening to these songs as long as all of us have. What's your favorite song to play in that set?
I have a bunch. One of my favorites is Anything Goes, just because there are so many cool guitar pieces in that. You Could Be Mine is another just like barn burner, right?
Are you using a guitar with the Floyd on that for that song?
Which one?
He's playing it on his Paul.
Oh, you're playing that on your Paul?
Yep.
On your Les Paul?
Yeah, You Could Be Mine. Yeah. I mean, there's not one song in the set that I don't enjoy playing. And there's actually more songs too that we haven't rotated into this set that we were doing back in the day. So from start to finish, I mean, the whole catalog is just amazing. There's not one that I don't like playing. Some of my favorites though are those two for sure. But I mean, you launch into the beginning of Welcome to the Jungle and people go bananas, right? And it's hard not to, start bouncing up and down the minute that thing kicks in, because I mean, every time it's just a barn burner, man. That energy is just unreal. And you know what's crazy is we've all played those songs, right? Being guitar players, we've all played along with those songs. We've all learned the pieces and the parts. And, if you're in a cover band, you probably played those songs at one time or another. And I remember, just playing those songs as a kid growing up. But it wasn't until the first time that I actually got in a room with Steven and played with Steven, and he laid down that drum beat, that I went, there it is. Now this sounds like the song. Because he has this incredible push and pull and feel to his playing that really is so rare when it comes to drummers. I mean, it's hard to describe, but it's part of the magic of that record.
Well, that is such an important point to make, that the way in which he plays is so important to the swing and the groove of all of those songs. One thing that you were talking about early in our conversation, Michael, was how enamored you were with so many Bay Area shredders as a young guy.
Yeah.
Where'd you find all the soul in your playing? Because you're not coming out there playing a million notes per minute, but look, you've got tons of chops, but where did all the soul come from? Where was the influence on that side?
You know, it's weird that you say that because sometimes like I'll hear stuff and I'll go like, oh, that's where that came from, and it's like weird influences, right? Like I remember, oh, God, and you guys might remember this too, when Huey Lewis and the News put out Sports. Remember that record?
Oh yeah.
There's some great riffs on that record, and some of the guitar playing on that was pretty iconic, man. But it as a little kid, it imprints on your brain, on your memory.
It's so funny you mentioned that. I went on Huey Lewis deep dive the other night, like
Right?
2.5 hours of watching and live stuff at that. I'm like, I gotta watch the live. How were they pulling this stuff off live? And that was great.
Yeah.
What a tight band and great guitar.
They're great. They're great. Two guitars, and one of them is a sax player. I mean,
Yeah,
ridiculous.
it's there's so much good stuff, and it's so weird because all these years later, I remember just listening to Pandora or something, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna check out the Huey Lewis channel, kind of go down memory lane, and I'm like listening to these songs, and I'm like, that's where I came from. Like I hear these influences, and I go, wow. It was really kind of like startling that when you're a kid, some of these experiences that you have, they really do make an imprint, and will come out in the future, good, bad, or different. So I think about some of that kind of stuff, and I've really always been into kind of like the more bluesy players. Like, I mean, Joe Perry obviously is icon, legend,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of guys who have so much kind of soul, and outside of just a guitar playing aspect. I mean, dude, I went to go see Lenny Kravitz, and you forget how many hits that guy has.
Every song. His hands and his brain are gold.
It's amazing, absolutely amazing. At sound check, you usually cannot escape a sound check without me playing the riff to Mama Said. Usually when they go guitar, stage left, I'm like, I love it. I mean, and of course that's a Slash riff that he brought in to Kravitz for that album. But if you listen to that Mama Said record from start to finish, not one bad track, right?
No, not at all. Yeah.
So, my musical tastes are so eclectic, dude. Like I listen to everything. But I feel like it's some of those players, and I always like the guitar players, and I've always gravitated. Like, listen, Steve Vai, amazing, right? And I know we talked about Jason Becker earlier, right? Mm-hmm. And I got a chance to see him play when I was a kid, growing up in the Bay Area. Jason Becker and Marty Friedman, and I'm just like, wow, these incredible guitar players. I mean, they just zip around the neck, and it's just so effortless for them. I have such tremendous respect for that because I honestly believe there's something weird going on there. You operate at a different level, right? For them, they were so young and it was so effortless. There's something going on out of the norm, and that's just raw, beautiful talent. But I really love guitar players that when you hear them, you go, oh, I know exactly who that is, right? And so, I mean,
Steve's
obviously, sorry?
Steve's one of them.
Yeah. So when you think about these kind of guitar players, right? So Joe Perry is an obvious choice. Angus Young, obvious choice. Slash, of course. You get into this cast of characters where you go, oh yeah, you hear that and you know who it is. You know who I've taken a deep dive into lately, which I think is incredible, and I've always thought is incredible, is Steve Stevens.
Oh yeah, man,
awesome.
Monster,
such a monster. And some of the stuff that he does live with Billy Idol, especially like some of the intros to like Eyes Without a Face. He does these really cool like flamenco guitar things. And it's just like it's mind blowing, right?
The flamenco guitar that he does is just inspiring.
That's his
Yeah.
guitar solo. His guitar solo starts on a golden nylon string. He plays a flamenco thing and then goes into his electric solo.
Yeah, I mean it's phenomenal. It's beautiful, like the pieces that he puts together. So I like those guitar players that have that identity. You know, you don't have to be a shredder guitar player. I respect them, and you know, I cannot say enough good about them. I really enjoy those artists too. That, you know, it could be a simple band. I mean, dude, Ace Frehley, right?
know.
Like you hear Ace's solos, you know it's Ace, and the beauty of it is the imperfection. You know, it's its own masterpiece. So it's so subjective. I mean, you know, I love the guys that. Yeah, you know, I love the guys that can burn a million miles an hour. I love the guys like Ace that can just do the simplest thing, but it's so cool. It's so iconic. It's so rock and roll.
How about John Sykes?
Ah, man, incredible. I mean, not only an incredible guitar player, but an incredible songwriter and singer. Like, the dude is so, like, overflowing with talent. I wish he would have put out more stuff. That Blue Murder record? Are you kidding me? Unbelievable.
That record changed my life. That Blue Murder record. I just unbelievable. What both of those records, both the first one and the Nothing But Trouble record. I mean, just incredible records from a guitar standpoint. You know, I really like the point you were making, Michael, about honoring music and song, and then finding opportunities to imprint, you know, personality. And for everybody watching this, there's a lot of video of Michael on YouTube, and if you want to see a really tasteful example of that, look at the end of Paradise City, and you'll see how Michael is, you know, presenting the song as it should be presented, and then you'll hear some personality in that outro solo, and is done in a very professional and tasteful way, which is why this man is always working.
Thank you.
Real quick, Michael, I have a kind of a lighthearted question, but it's a very serious question.
Yeah.
How is it that you play your Les Paul down at your kneecaps, and you play so precise, and with, I mean, you don't miss a note. You're really right on top of it. How did you learn to play your guitar that low and be that good at it? It boggles my mind, because, you know, I play at my belt line, and I mean, that's comfortable, but I mean, I try to play at my knees, and I can't even reach with my arms. First of all, you know, it's crazy.
Dude, that's very kind of you to say. So thank you for the compliment. You know, I just always love that look of having that big Les Paul down around your knees and get that full arm extension, and just the vibe of it. I mean, I just loved that whole thing. And maybe it was like Billy Duffy from the Cult, because I know there were a couple things of Billy Duffy with that low slung Les Paul, and, you know, he's got his arm up in the air, and I just thought, man, that was so cool and iconic. Like, the Cult's one of my favorite bands of all time.
Me too.
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, another guitar player that when you hear Billy Duffy, you know exactly who it is. And he's not Mr. Shreddo crazy guitar solo guy, but what he does fits the songs, and it's so iconic, man. The Cult is another one of those just iconic bands for me.
You know, such a great point. Like, he owns melody. I mean, if you think about every big Cult song, from Sanctuary to Rise to Choice of Weapon, there's a lot of melody lines through all of those songs. You know, Firewoman, Sweet Soul Sister, lots of melody.
Yeah. And then back to the whole thing about the guitar being so low. It's funny that you say that, because I want to say this was like about 4 or 5 years ago. Paul Crosby from Saliva called me and said, "Hey, man, can you come out to Florida and help fill in for a couple gigs?" There was something going on at the time, and the guitar player couldn't make the gig. So I flew out to Florida to rehearse with those guys as you know, a backup for some upcoming shows they had. And I remember being in the studio and going through the set with those guys. And it was funny because, I mean, it sounded awesome. It was a great time. And the the singer was looking over at me, and Paul was like, "So what do you think?" And the singer was like, "Yeah, sounds great, man. I can't figure out how he plays these songs with that guitar so low. How do you do that so fast with playing his guitar so low?" And it made me laugh because I never really thought about that. So maybe I kind of do play it low, but that's where my comfort level's at. So
It's just awesome. I mean, the fact is Les Pauls look great slung low.
yeah,
You know, long hair, thin, lanky guy with a Les Paul slung low. It doesn't look any better than that, honestly. But the way you play it is it's off the charts. It's great.
thank you so much.
Kurt 5150, two more great examples of how the Cult has melody. Love Removal Machine and Rain. Rain is like the king of melody.
Yeah.
I mean that melody line that runs through the choruses on that song. Good call, Kurt.
Yeah.
Michael, we are so appreciative of your time tonight, for you sharing so much of yourself, so much of your experience with us as an audience. How can we stay connected to you in social media?
So the easiest way would be either to, just kind of follow me on Facebook or Instagram. So on Facebook, it's Michael Thomas 19. And on Instagram, it's Michael Thomas. So either one, I try to update those as much as possible. I put up, upcoming tour dates, little updates here and there, as far as what I have going on currently. So that's the best way to stay in touch at the moment.
Very good. Terry 3G, one of our distinguished moderators, is posting links to Michael's social channels now.
Awesome.
Follow this. Michael runs a great Instagram feed. Give him a follow on Instagram.
I just did.
And do yourself a favor as a rock and roll fan and go see this band play live.
Yes.
It is a fun time.
All the newcomers in the chat that joined us tonight, thank you so much. If you like the show we did with Michael and shows that we do like this, please subscribe and click the bell, and you'll be notified when we do more shows with great guests such as Michael.
Mm-hmm.
We do this every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Michael, thank you so much. If you have a minute or two to hang with us, we'll say goodbye off air.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Ben, do you have anything to conclude with?
I agree that, a Les Paul, if your belt buckle rubs the back of the guitar, you're wearing it too high. Just saying.
Absolutely.
Other than that,
guys,
I gotta say, I've been a fan of Michael's playing for some time, and now doing this hang, I know he'd be a super cool guy to hang with as well. Talking gear, and he has great taste in music, and he's played with just about everybody, it seems. And even if you add up all those bands he's played with, he's had about a month's worth of rehearsal for all those bands combined.
I think we just gotta, we've got a glimpse into Michael's personality a little bit, and it's pretty clear as to why he works so much.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you for having me on the show tonight. I really appreciate it, and thanks for everybody who joined us and submitted their questions. I mean, this was a blast, and I hope we get to do it again in the near future.
People are already asking for a part 2. So.
Yeah, we would love to have a part 2 at some point when you have some free time.
Absolutely.
Guitar Man 45 is going to see you at the Diesel Lounge on October 1st.
Yes.
Nice, because he's just outside of Detroit and Brighton, Michigan. So nice.
Awesome. Look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you again, Michael.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Ty and Ben, always great doing the show with you.
Always
everyone
a pleasure,
in the chat,
Dave.
thank you so much for sticking around, everybody. On that note, we're going to say goodnight for now, and we'll see you all next week. Michael, stick around, and we're out of here.
Thanks, guys.